Ladies and gentlemen, we are almost 9 months into President Trump's second term, and we are also currently on day number 7 of the federal government shutdown. And I'll tell you what, we just got some brand new numbers that are absolutely catastrophic for the Democrats. Now, as you all know, the Democrats have been doing every single possible thing they can do to try to undermine Trump's presidency. Recently, they've even decided to shut down the entire federal government. But much to their dismay, in spite of all of their nonstop anti-Trump propaganda, the American people are still in complete and total support of pretty much every single thing that President Trump is doing. In fact, not only does President Trump currently have a whopping 57% approval rating, but also, we just got a ton of new issue-by-issue data relating to all of President Trump's individual policies and how all of us Americans actually feel about them. And so, as a little bit of a spoiler here, President Trump is absolutely killing it. Take a look. According to recent polling data, 82% of Americans support lowering prescription drug prices for Medicare recipients and low-income patients. 78% of Americans support deporting immigrants who are here illegally and have committed crimes. 78% of Americans support undertaking a full-scale effort to find and eliminate fraud and waste in federal government expenditures. 68% of Americans support closing the border with added security and policies that discourage illegal crossings. 68% of Americans support launching a government-run website for consumers to buy drugs directly from manufacturers at discounts of 50% or higher. 65% of Americans support banning men who have undergone operations and hormones to become women from girls' sports. 63% of Americans support eliminating all preferences by race in the hiring and awarding process of government contracts. 63% of Americans also support using the U.S. military to target cartel drug smugglers in Latin America. 62% of Americans support making the 2017 tax cuts permanent. 61% of Americans support raising strength and readiness standards in the military on a gender-neutral basis. 61% of Americans support declaring that there are only 2 genders, male and female, in all government forms and programs. 59% of Americans support placing reciprocal tariffs on countries that have tariffs on U.S. goods. 58% of Americans support freezing and reevaluating all foreign aid expenditures and the departments that handled them. 56% of Americans support deporting all illegal immigrants who are in the country at all. 55% of Americans support using the military to prevent illegal immigration in the USA. 54% of Americans support ending bans on offshore drilling in Alaska and elsewhere. 52% of Americans support ordering strikes on Iran to destroy their nuclear capabilities, and 51% of Americans support using the National Guard and active duty military to police American cities in order to stop crime and disorder. And so, folks, as you can clearly see, as things currently stand, pretty much the overwhelming majority of Americans support almost every single one of President Trump's policy points. In fact, this level of support is actually so overwhelming that even CNN is being forced to do mental gymnastics to make sense of it. Take a look.
You know, you go back to October of 2024, 44% of the American public viewed him favorably. Now, despite everything, look at this, 43%, which is well within the margin of error of that 44%. And here's the thing to keep in mind. This was good enough to get Trump reelected back in 2024. And Donald Trump is basically at the same point here right now, which I think would surprise a lot of folks, especially a lot of folks on the left who very much disagree with a lot of what Donald Trump has done.
But what do you see is underneath that and driving that? Why is he basically the same?
Okay, you know, to quote the esteemed caller Dennis Green, the former head coach in the National Football League, Donald Trump is who the voters thought he was. What are we talking about here? Well, is Trump doing what he promised in the 2024 campaign? Yes, 52%. The majority of Americans say that Donald Trump is doing what he promised compared to 48% who said no. So what essentially is going on here is the voters expected all of this from Donald Trump. The majority did, and that is why his favorable rating, simply put, has not really moved all that much compared to where it was a year ago. Trump is basically doing what the American people thought that he was going to do. Indeed, if you look at the numbers, Trump has basically the steadiest favorable rating this much through a presidency of any president on record.
And so, folks, even CNN, with all of their biased polls, are now being forced to recognize and admit that President Trump is, in fact, delivering on all of his campaign promises. And so, considering all of this information, now we all finally understand why the Democrats have shut down the government, because they're just desperately trying to do anything to prevent President Trump from delivering on his America First agenda, which all of us actual Americans completely support. In fact, take a look at this. According to a recent poll from the New York Times, 70% of Americans are currently unhappy with the government shutdown, and 65% of Americans blame the Democrats for it. So pretty much, their entire Democrat plan has completely backfired. Now, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson actually gave his thoughts on all of this just earlier today, but before we take a look at that, I do want to say real quick that if you folks enjoy the daily news updates, please consider subscribing to the channel because it really does help a lot. But okay, take a look at this.
This New York Times poll that they just released showed that 65% of Americans do not want the Democrats to shut down the government if their demands are not met. Some Republicans are actually surprised by that because they often lose the shutdown wars. What's clicking there that in shutdowns past perhaps didn't with the American people?
Well, because the American people are smart. They could see what's happened. The House Republicans did our job. The Senate Republicans are trying to. We passed the clean resolution, a simple, clean resolution. Why? It's very important. We're trying to get Congress to work again, the regular appropriations process. We're supposed to do 12 separate bills that are carefully debated.
I remember those days.
Remember? Mm-hmm. We haven't done it in a long time, but we're forcing the muscle memory back. The problem is we ran out of clock because it takes time to do that. And the fiscal year is tonight at midnight. So we just did a simple, clean resolution, give us till November 21 to finish the process. Chuck Schumer is stopping it for raw political purposes. People see through that. And imagine what it is he's arguing. He wants to give free health care to illegal aliens.
And so, ladies and gentlemen, here's the unfortunate reality. Long gone are the days during which the Democrats were the party of the working class. Now they're really just nothing more than the party of illegal aliens, domestic terrorists, and transgender for everybody. But really, perhaps their biggest issue is that, on top of all of their other problems, the Democrats also don't even have a strong leader. They're like a bunch of chickens running around with their heads cut off. Right now, they're just absolutely flailing around out of pure, directionless desperation. In fact, President Trump actually just chimed in on that idea earlier this morning. Take a look.
I'll tell you what, I'm getting calls from Democrats wanting to meet. I never even heard their names before, and they're claiming to be leaders. The Democrats have no leader. They remind me of Somalia, okay?
Folks, as a political party, you know you are down bad when President Trump is comparing you to Somalia. But as you all know, he's not even incorrect. As we've said, the Democrats are completely aimless right now. Americans have justifiably completely abandoned them. And the reason why is because all of us absolutely love everything that President Trump is doing. And you know why? Because so far, President Trump is actually putting America first.